Amy Winehouse is a heavily talented British singer-songwriter who won 5 Grammy Awards from her 2006 album Back to Black and earned acclaim for songs like the title track Rehab and Love is a Losing Game. Winehouse's enormous talent and musical career was short-lived due to her addiction to drugs and alcohol. In recent years, we've continuously seen such patterns play out over and over again, leading to the downfall of great artists. Just like most creative artists who have found themselves in this condition, Amy Winehouse was unhealthily and inappropriately judged by society because of the general lack of awareness of the psychology of addiction, which makes people believe that long-term substance abuse is more of a choice and not a disease. Is there any better way to handle conditions similar to that of Amy Winehouse? Why should addiction be seen as a disease rather than a situation to criticize? What are the internal motivations of artists who find themselves in this condition? Stay tuned and ensure you watch until the end to find out more and discover Amy Winehouse, why artists are often drawn to drugs. At the age of 19, Amy Winehouse had already landed her first record deal. The British singer is a legendary artist who paved the way for several other female artists in the industry. Amy Winehouse was born in London in 1983 to Jewish parents. Her father, Mitch, worked as a taxi driver, while her mother, Janice, was a pharmacist. Her parents got divorced when she was just 9 years old. Amy and her older brother, Alex, were primarily raised by her mother. Her love for music was influenced by her grandmother, Cynthia, who was a professional singer. Cynthia also dated jazz legend Ronnie Scott, while several of her uncles were jazz musicians. Her dad, Mitch, was also a massive Rat Pack fan and often sang Frank Sinatra to her as a child. Fly Me to the Moon was Amy's favorite song. With all those people around her, Amy grew up to love music. However, she suffered from mental health problems from the early age of 16, and this condition remained with her. Quote, "Since I was 16, I felt a black cloud hangs over me. Since then, I've taken pills for depression."
You're becoming an artist in the public eye.
The more people see of me, the more they'll realise that all I'm good for is making music.
Nevertheless, she was an exceptional talent in music, and in 2003, Universal's subsidiary label, Island Records, released her debut album, Frank, which was inspired by her love for Sinatra. This album was her breakthrough, and it was during this initial success with Frank that Winehouse started drinking more. On a night out, she met Blake Fielder Civil, and they started their infamous, brief, and tumultuous relationship. Together, they fell into drug and alcohol abuse, with Winehouse gaining a reputation as a party girl who'd show up often too drunk to perform or finish her sets. Someone who has never suffered from addiction might be quick to judge Amy, but for an addict, withdrawal is not that easy. For most people, they might even be in denial, while others are scared of the pain that comes from withdrawal. Quote,
"Because addiction is a disease that affects your judgment and your perceptions of things. It deceives you into believing that you are okay and that things are okay with you."
In one of Winehouse's hit songs, Rehab, she sang that she will not go into rehab, even though people around her encouraged her to go. "It's not just my pride, it's just till these tears have dried," Winehouse sings.
They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no.
The pressures of show business might have contributed to this. Most times, artists have to stay awake for 2 to 3 days due to long travels. Or they have to stay skinny, especially professional models who have to suppress the feeling of hunger, and then they find themselves in a vicious circle of uppers and downers. This situation often makes them turn to substance abuse as a way to cope with life, when things like job stress, relationship problems, and financial pressures become too much to bear. Although there are better ways to cope, those who use substance abuse as a crutch may feel they have no other options. This situation is not particular to artists either, as normal people often face these same challenges. They may abuse drugs, but as they're not public figures, it may not come out as often as it does with famous people. So it might seem like artists have a higher rate of drug abuse, but in fact, we never know. Another reason why artists are drawn to drug abuse is the mental pressure of being a public persona. They often feel the pressure of doing everything right. Otherwise, there'd be another scandal. To reduce the pressure on them, most of these artists fall back on drugs. A drug-dependent person might not want to seek treatment because the anticipation of physical withdrawal and the likelihood of losing his or her relationship with those that hinder their sobriety may keep many from accepting treatment. It becomes increasingly more difficult when the use of drugs turns into a way of life. With most friends and social situations revolving around drugs, removing drugs from the scene now might make the addict feel bored or unfulfilled. In the case of Winehouse, she enrolled in rehab a few times, but left early from each program.
And my advice would be to jump in. They might not appreciate your help initially, but you're saving their lives, and it's a matter of life and death. Treatment works, there's hope for people, there are no kind of hopeless artistic cases, people just need to intervene.
When talking about drug abuse, we can't leave out the fact that there's often something or someone in the life of a drug abuser that tends to encourage them to go down that path. For Winehouse, her drug abuse was blamed on her ex-husband, Blake Fielder Civil. Blake was the one that introduced Amy to drugs, and they often did it together. One may call their relationship toxic. They were the kind of couple that couldn't stay together and couldn't stay apart either. There's also the impact of her relationship with her grandmother. Amy's father, Mitch Winehouse, said the death of Winehouse's grandmother in 2006, who Winehouse credited for jump-starting her career, may have pushed her even further into depression. Winehouse was found dead on July 23, 2011, at her home in London at the age of 27. This age is coincidentally the age that several other musicians, such as Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, and Janis Joplin, have died in the past. The 27 Club is one of the most tragic coincidences ever recorded in the history of rock and roll. The term became popular in 1994 after the death of Cobain. This club is mainly made up of musicians who would rise to become the pioneers of music in their generation across different genres, from rock to blues. Some of these young artists died from unknown circumstances, others from taking their own lives, while a substantial number fell victim to the excesses of drugs and alcohol. The official cause of death for Amy was alcohol poisoning, but Winehouse also publicly struggled with drug abuse, bulimia, self-harm, and, in her own words, manic depression. Winehouse's drug abuse is something that was obvious for all to see, and she openly acknowledged it. The height of it was in June of 2011, when she couldn't perform on stage due to her drunken state. Fans who had paid to watch the British star perform in Belgrade, Serbia, booed her off the stage. At a time, it even became sort of sport to make fun of her and offend her. This must have also affected her and contributed to her downward spiral. Prior to this performance, it was reported that Winehouse had left rehab a few weeks before her Belgrade show. Unfortunately, she didn't give herself enough time to recover from her addiction before thrusting herself back into the spotlight. In a tribute to Winehouse, actor and musician Russell Brand, who is a former addict and a friend of Winehouse, called the public to see addiction as a disease that needs to be treated. Quote, "Whether this tragedy was preventable or not is now irrelevant. It's not preventable today. We have lost a beautiful and talented woman to this disease. Not all addicts have Amy's incredible talent, or Kurt's, or Jimmy's, or Janis's. Some people just get the affliction," wrote Brand on his website. He continues, "All we can do is adapt the way we view this condition, not as a crime or a romantic affection, but as a disease that will kill. We need to review the way society treats addicts, not as criminals, but as sick people in need of care." It's also worthy of note that no matter how many family members and friends might push an addict to seek treatment, the ultimate decision to follow through lies with the affected person themselves. Winehouse might not have acknowledged the extent to which her life was impacted by drugs and alcohol. She denied the extent to which it affected her. The British singer wasn't really seeking formal treatment, but there was something she wanted desperately, and it was to continue her career. Winehouse was reportedly working on another album, which she failed to finish because her addiction to drugs and alcohol led her to an early grave. It's easy to judge someone when you've never been in their shoes, and addiction is among the most prevalent sources of unwarranted criticism. Those who are quick to judge are often not experienced in the world of addiction. What do you think about that? Tell us in the comment section down below. And thanks for watching. See you next time.